Meditation and Spiritual Life, Swami Yatiswarananda. Man's duty to himself. Over and above the 5 kinds of duties mentioned above, every man has a duty to himself, to his higher self. So, over and above the 5 kinds of duties, the 5 kinds of duties like worship of God, study of scriptures, helping fellow beings, offering oblations to ancestors, and protecting animals. These are the duties of a householder. But primarily, he has a duty to himself, and that is to his higher self. Since every soul is part of the universal soul, when a man discharges his duty to his higher self, he fulfills all other obligations. The higher self of man is waiting for its manifestation, its unfoldment, its awakening. But it is constantly being eclipsed by his lower self or ego. In the din and bustle of day to day life, in the headlong rush towards sense enjoyment, man neglects the still small voice within him, the cry of his soul. So, uh, constantly, if I'm busy with the duties of a man, uh, the 5 duties, although those duties are not to satisfy the ego, but to see the divine spirit in the external world and as a service to the divine, as a worship to the divine, the duties are to be performed. But then, a duty to my higher self is also prescribed. As a result, whatever he does becomes in the end a source of dissatisfaction and frustration for him. Even the so called service of fellow beings leaves him weary and discontented because uh, no matter how much I orient myself when I am doing duty to the fellow beings as a service to the divine, my mind is constantly oscillating between the lower ego to the higher ego, super ego. So the discontentment and dissatisfaction creeps in, unnoticed, unidentified. It creeps in. All our duties must have the unfoldment of the higher self as their integral aim. Exactly what this worshipful attitude is, then alone will life appear meaningful. The main problem is that people want to become teachers without undergoing a strict course of sadhana, without becoming pure instruments in the hands of the Lord. He lives in the temple of the human body. We should first come to know the Lord ourselves and be able to solve our own problems and then help others. By our very being, we can help others silently. By our very being divine, we can help others silently by our own radiation, by radiating truth without their being aware of it. But without having attained any spiritual experience ourselves, it is quite absurd to think or talk about helping others spiritually. So, serving others in the spirit of the divine, in a worshipful attitude, it's a beginning. That attitude needs to be cultivated. But until and unless I'm radiating spirituality, we constantly oscillate and fail, and hence we get weary and discontented. Once you have developed real purity, and attaining that real purity is the duty to himself. Once you have developed real purity and non-attachment, vairagya, you no longer get mixed up with the world, and the world no longer acts on your mind and nerves. You don't get attached. And then alone can you talk about helping others, realizing that you are only an instrument in the hands of the Lord. Until then, whatever helping others we do, we must be very clear that yes, some help might be possible from our side, but it is only satisfying our egos and nothing else. No one actually gets helped by us. There is another thing that should be considered as our duty. A little of the student's life has to be continued even after school days. What does it mean? Constantly open to learning. If there comes any break in our studies and serious readings, it is very bad for the development of our mind and thinking faculty. Many people lose their thinking habit when they leave school or grow older, and this is very bad indeed. There is nothing so dangerous as loose, hazy thinking. Having lost their thinking habit, they become only men of action and not men of thought. Both should be combined and harmonized, otherwise, the effects will be very bad. For most people, it becomes impossible to take up their studies again after been after there has been a break. So constant work, mind doesn't mind loses the ability to sit and study. And the very few who succeed in doing so must pass through a period of terrible strain and struggle because the thinking habit has been lost. Their shallow, superficial readings, their light talks, their thoughtless outward activities have spoiled their thinking faculty to a great extent. If you open your eyes, you will see the effects of this in our present day world. Thoughtless, hectic activity without any higher ideal or deeper understanding of truth and the higher laws. Activity for the sake of activity, which is not much better than idleness for the sake of idleness, however much people may pride themselves on that kind of active life. So, constant activity, we feel proud, oh, we are doing so much work. But no, it is not enough that I go on creating something. What I create must be something good, other constructive, not destructive or tending to degrade humanity. So, even if we do not find time to read much, intense thinking must be made a matter of daily practice. So much time is continually being wasted in thinking useless and even harmful thoughts, which might be made use of for thinking along higher constructive lines. There is so much dull moments in the course of the day, and these dull moments can very well be used for higher thinking. Instead of thinking useless thoughts, let us make use of that time for something higher. Instead of sitting in some corner and being dull, we can make use of such moments by thinking of something higher and truer. If we really do this, we shall find that there is plenty of time for our practices, our studies, our intelligent thinking. Our thoughts should never be allowed to drift aimlessly. Very often we go and sit in a more or less thoughtless manner for half an hour or so, or read some light stuff, or listen to something light and worthless. All this we do more or less like idiots. It's very funny. Now we do doom scrolling, scrolling reels after reels. We even find it pleasant, but the moment that half an hour is to be used for devotional readings or serious studies for something profitable, and their whole brain revolts and resists. We can do half an hour, no, we can do 5 hours of scrolling reels after reels. It's very easy, but half an hour serious study, oh, the mind, the brain revolts. One can ponder profitably over the well known saying of the Buddha, "Come now, brethren, I do remind ye, subject to decay are all compounded things. Do ye abide in heedfulness?" This advice helps us very greatly in avoiding useless occupation and random thinking by making us realize the evanescence of the phenomenon. We should make it a point to stress the unchanging principle in our life and not that which is continually changing and transforming itself in countless ways. And the highest duty of man is to realize that principle here in this very life and then to help others in realizing it. So, Buddha is telling, "Come, brethren, now I remind you, these all compounded things around you see, combinations of this and that, it is subject to change and decay. So, don't go on investing your mind and time and energy in those things. Rather, abide. You constantly dwell in heedfulness, mindfulness. Pay attention to what? To the highest duty. That is to realize the highest principle. The petty self, the ego that I am this, I am that, leaving this, getting out of this ignorance is our duty, and abiding in that. If we consciously utilize the time that is being lost in the talk, in idle talk, in useless occupations and thoughts, we should find more time than we need. Through practice, we can develop such intensive thinking that 2 hours ordinary thinking may be done in half an hour. There are two things, quantity and quality. If you cannot increase the quantity, then improve the quality of your meditation studies, etc. It is advisable for everybody that it is advisable for everybody not only to find time for his prayers, japa, and meditation, but also to have some regular studies, some studying, some readings of selected passages from the Upanishads for at least 10 minutes after his spiritual practice. Inertia, dullness are two great enemies of spiritual life in all its phases. And there are many people who develop physical and mental inertia, which is very, very dangerous. When we allow this mood of inertia to possess us, we do not find any time either for our practices or for readings and studies. In such a mood, we do not see the time. It slips. Though the time may be there, we become too dull to be aware of it. No structure, no discipline, no routine, no timetable. Sense controls Sense control helps us in thinking intensely and in living intensely and purposefully. Controlling the senses gives us intensity in thought. Why always go and dwell in the sense world? When the senses are controlled, one can easily remain on the thought plane. Why go and get kicks and blows from the outside world? When distractions are removed, we will be able to lead a more intensive and conscious life. and remain as wide awake as possible under all circumstances. But very often we find that people become more and more dull and inert like stocks and stones, finding less and less time for their studies and spiritual practice. As soon as the goad of outward distractions and worldly pursuits have been removed.